So we are a couple of days into the year of 2025, and of course, video games are on the forefront of many of our minds because you're watching a video game related channel. So, I mean, there's obviously going to be talk about what is going to happen in this upcoming year. And for today's video, I decided to give some bold predictions for the gaming year of 2025, what I kind of expect to happen. And I'm not saying that this is based on insider information or anything like that. This is just kind of my opinion on things I think have a probability of happening. Some of these opinions and guesses are more bold than others. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video to hear all of my thoughts on these things. But without any further ado, let's hop straight into it. And I want to start off with Ubisoft because I think we've seen the end of Ubisoft as we kind of know it. 2024 was a horrible year for the company. Games absolutely flopped, did not meet expectations, and this isn't really something that has been new for Ubisoft. They've kind of been struggling the past couple of years with some bigger titles, but they've had kind of their standbys to always fall back on. Games like, of course, Assassin's Creed and games like Far Cry, games that do lots of numbers and they have big budgets, but they end up meeting those budgets and then exceeding them, thus making the company money. But when you have a catastrophic flop with a game like Star Wars Outlaws, and now there's been rumors that Ubisoft and the Guillemot family is looking to potentially sell off the company, I think this is the end of Ubisoft as we know them. I think Assassin's Creed Shadows will do decent. I don't think it's going to do anywhere near as good as Valhalla, but I think it'll do decent enough, but not decent enough to potentially save the company. I think, there's either a major structural change, maybe a Chinese company comes in and buys up Ubisoft, because I think that's something that's going to happen a lot in 2025. But I just think we've kind of seen the end of Ubisoft as we kind of know it. Maybe it won't be thrusted into the limelight. Maybe it won't make the headline news about Ubisoft going under a major transformation, but I definitely see a major transformation, potentially downsizing massively or even selling out to a different company in the calendar year of 2025 for Ubisoft. And kind of piggybacking on that, I think you're going to see more game studio closures, more game studio layoffs. People laugh at me when I say that the video game industry is not in a very healthy place right now, and there needs to be some sort of soft reset because we are in a bit of a video game crash when it comes to just how the companies and how the industry as a whole grew to such high expectations because of things like COVID, and companies are idiots and they couldn't foresee that, hey, these numbers aren't going to last. At some point, we're going to come back to reality, and people aren't going to be stuck in their house playing video games as much anymore. And there's going to be a bit of a downturn, but these companies didn't account for that. And it kind of makes you wonder who the hell is running these companies and are they really qualified to be doing it? But I definitely think you're going to see more game studio closures, more layoffs and stuff like that. And, it sucks to see, but the gaming industry does need some sort of soft reboot. There is a crash going on right now. Whether you want to believe it or not, just look at the calendar year of 2024 and the massive amount of layoffs that happened just within that year comparative to years and decades past, and you could see it's a completely different ball game. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, no pun intended, because I want to talk about Gears of War E-Day. Now, some people are expecting this game to potentially come out in 2025, and I'll be showing Gears of War 5 trailer footage in this video because for some reason, YouTube just hates the Gears of War E-Day trailer. It says that it's not appropriate for audiences and stuff like that. But I think Gears of War E-Day will get an announcement in 2025, but I think that announcement is that this game is coming to PlayStation. Now, I know that that's not a huge shock to a lot of people, but really when you think about it, there are some IPs that many Xbox fans consider untouchable. A game like Indiana Jones, Sea of Thieves, stuff like that. They're obviously different titles than first-party developed and created Xbox games. But when you look at a game like Gears of War E-Day, there's obviously going to be a large amount of the game dedicated to the multiplayer section of the game. And what better way to expand the multiplayer than having it available on PlayStation platforms as well. You potentially triple, quadruple the player base right out of the gate. And if you have things like microtransactions, different skins, battle passes, and crap like that that are very evident in games that we've seen coming out within the past 5 years or so, like, I think that just makes sense. You know, I'm not 100% sure Fable or Perfect Dark will go to PlayStation, but I think Gears of War E-Day is coming to PlayStation, and I think there will be an announcement of that during this year. I also think there's going to be a big shakeup at Xbox, whether that's Matt Booty or Matt Ass, as he's known on this channel, Sarah Bond or Phil Spencer. I see one of those three amigos either leaving or potentially being let go of from Xbox, because there is a big identity crisis right now with the company. Whether you want to admit that or not, that is up to you. But from my perspective, there is an identity crisis here. There are concerns to be had, because it really feels like you're at that point where you're just throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks, hoping that that's the next thing, whether that be Game Pass, cloud gaming, putting your games onto other platforms and stuff like that, focusing on the streaming side of things. Like, there's a lot of stuff being thrown at the wall, and I feel like the idea is, well, we need something to stick. And it feels like a lot of things have not stuck recently for Xbox. And at some point in time, there needs to be accountability for that. And I think one of those three amigos is going to be not working at Xbox by the end of 2025. My final Xbox prediction is that I think Xbox will talk about their new console, but I don't think it's a traditional console. I don't think you're going to see something like you see with an Xbox Series X and an Xbox Series X, a console that you have in your television and it uses physical media and stuff like that. I really foresee Xbox's next console being more so focused on downloads and streaming stuff. Like, I don't foresee a console that accepts physical media coming from Xbox as their next system is concerned. And I think they might actually talk about this in 2025 as well. Obviously, Xbox game sales are not that high. A lot of people just play games on things like Game Pass that are involved in the Xbox ecosystem. And if you don't believe me, look at any multi-platform game that comes out on other systems, and Xbox is always in dead last when it comes to software sales. So I think this new console isn't really going to be a console, and I'm very interested to see if this is revealed in 2025, and if so, how the reaction is online, because I already know what my reaction is going to be. Let's move over to PlayStation, because PlayStation had an interesting 2024, a bit of a mixed bag with things, and we're going to start out with Fair Games, because Fair Games is going to flop. Look, people are tired of these fight the man, anti-establishment pseudo games with a bunch of edgy people that are being made by billion-dollar studios. Like, you're obviously trying to hit a certain section of the market that doesn't necessarily exist within the video game sphere. And I think Fair Games might actually have some decent gameplay, obviously with games like Payday 3 being a colossal disappointment. Like, there is a market for the bank robbing sort of game, but the aesthetic of the game, the vibe of the game, the characters of the game are just so off-putting for so many people that it's just like, does the game have a chance of succeeding? I think Jade Raymond is one of the greatest con artists of the past decade plus, because she hasn't released anything, but she keeps getting hired by studios like Google and Sony to make games that never exist, or if they do exist, they end up being colossal failures. Like, shout out to Jade Raymond, man. She is a hustler. Absolute hustler, getting by on her name alone, and I respect that. But I think games like Fair Games, the problem is, and you can even accompany this with Naughty Dog's new game, is that I don't think necessarily people look at a character and they completely write it off initially. I think you have to understand that, like, when it comes to having a character that's a little bit different than what is, usually seen in video games, there has to be a reason for that. like, what is this character's story? Why do I care about this character? Is this character angsty just to be angsty? Is this just how they were written? If so, that doesn't make for an interesting character. When I think of games like Metal Gear Solid 2, that game has one of the most diverse casts in the world, and like nobody cared about it because all the characters were very well written. They all had, aspects to their personality that you were able to be seen. And when you have a game like Fair Games, where it seems like it's just a bunch of angsty people just being angsty, a game like Intergalactic is this angsty bald woman just being angsty. It's like, well, what is the reasoning behind that? And that's why I'm not writing off Intergalactic and stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of these developers are so hyper focused on the visual aesthetic of the character and not hyper focused on the story of the character and, who this character is and what their personality is. And, that's something that obviously you could kind of look at Sony and question kind of their decisions when they're making some of these games. Games like Concord, they just had a diverse cast just to have one. And like, I get it. It was a multiplayer shooter game, but people resonate better with people based on personality than physical appearance, than, ethnicity, sexuality, and stuff like that. You're not friends with someone because of their ethnicity or sexuality. You're friends with someone because of their personality, because they resonate with you as a human, and you enjoy being in the presence of that person. And I feel like a lot of game developers don't really realize that, or they're just trying to pander to people to line their own pockets. The anti-grift. And then the other thing I kind of foresee for PlayStation is they're going to find a better balance in 2025, because I think Astrobot opened up a lot of eyes for PlayStation because of the fact that, you don't have to have this huge, super engrossing story and, hyper realistic visuals in every single first party game that you make. It doesn't have to be narrative based. You can make a game that's just fun and it looks good and it plays good and it doesn't have a big budget and it doesn't have a long development cycle, and literally win Game of the Year with Astrobot. Like, that was one of the best games. If Indiana Jones did not come out in 2024, or Batman Arkham Shadow VR. But, VR games are kind of different. Console games. Let's just say console games. If Indiana Jones didn't exist, Astrobot would have been my favorite game of 2024 by a country mile. You could still have the single player narrative games that you enjoy, that you seem to enjoy making. But you have to realize that there are people that just like a game that just looks nice and is fun and is, you could pick up and play it. You don't have to worry about some super engrossing story. Because once again, going back to what I was just saying, a lot of these stories don't really seem to be resonating with people. They just seem to just go completely off the rails for the sake of going off the rails without really having any sort of context to why it is going off the rails. But I foresee Sony finding a better balance. I expect some, classic Sony IPs to potentially be revealed this year as smaller games, something more so along the lines of Astrobot than something along the lines of like a new Naughty Dog game or something like that. And I'm very hopeful for that as well. The final company, we're going to keep it very brief because obviously, there's a lot of questions going on with Nintendo, with the Switch 2 and stuff like that. And I've talked about it ad nauseum recently on the channel, but there is one thing. And this is probably my boldest prediction. This is one thing that I think could potentially happen. Because one thing I always say is that Nintendo Switch Online needs more consoles. They need more variety on there. You've already kind of seemed to have tapped out the Super Nintendo and the NES. You're coming close to tapping out the N64 as far as games that people would be interested in playing. Obviously, there's still games like Donkey Kong 64, Diddy Kong Racing, stuff like that. But I see those happening in 2025, 100% complete. You gotta add some additional value in here. And while many people are looking at first-party Nintendo systems to be it, I kind of think about something that is currently happening right now with Sega. Sega essentially saying that they are not a retro game studio, a retro game company. So in lieu of that, they're not doing a Dreamcast Mini. They're not doing a Sega Saturn Mini. And I think the Sega Dreamcast is going to appear on Nintendo Switch Online. This just makes sense to me. Okay, it obviously Sega will get a cut of it. They don't have to worry about being a retro company. The Dreamcast has a phenomenal lineup of games. Even if you're just doing like first party stuff, there is more than enough to make people happy and excited for that. Emulation for Dreamcast isn't all that difficult. Some of these games online would be super fun to play as well. There are single player games, there's multiplayer games, there's a great variety of stuff. You have the Sonic Adventure games, Crazy Taxi games, Power Stone games, you've got Shenmue, which I just beat, but I'll beat it again on the Nintendo Switch. Like, I think this is a real opportunity for Sega and Nintendo to both make some money. I think people would be very excited for something like that, to have a Dreamcast library available on Nintendo. We have the Sega Genesis. We've had previous Sega consoles on things like the Wii Virtual Console. If you're not going to do something with the Dreamcast, why not have a company that has a retro catalog? Why not have them put it on their system? You make some money, they make some money, gamers get more games, and everyone is happy. But those are just some of my wild-eyed thoughts for 2025. Like I said, these are all just guesses on my part. You know, looking at some things, maybe just assuming some things. I'm not saying any of this is concrete, but I do think it'll be fun to revisit this video at the end of 2025 to see if I was right about any of this or if I was completely wrong and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Anyways, let me know some of your crazy predictions for 2025 in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well so you're not missing any video uploads. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.